Welcome to Kangaroost, the podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody, because I assume y'all all listen to this on the day it's released. Happy Wednesday, Rachel.
Happy Wednesday to all of us. Are you ready for the question of the day?
I'm ready.
We're going to jump right in. Are you a night owl or an early bird? I know this answer, but, for the rest of us here.
Well, it's changed. It is absolutely changed. I remember in much younger days, man, I would stay up to the wee hours of the morning. Wee hours. I remember not going to parties until after midnight in college. I'm like, man, that is awful. That sounds awful now. But my alarm clock wakes me up before the sun now. And I find a great deal of fun being an early bird now. So it helps me get my day started and helps me tackle the world. What about you?
Similarly, I think naturally I'm a night owl. Like, I like being up late. I feel like I have to cram all the things in. So the time that I can do that is after people are already asleep and I feel like I finally have me time. However, I feel also like I don't like wasting any hours of the day. So I feel like if I've slept in past, I can't tell you the last time I actually slept in past like 7 o'clock. 7 is late for me. But I think I'm just old and have a lot of kids. And so the nature of my life makes me get up early, whether I really like it or not. I do think I'd struggle with feeling like I'd slept away half the day.
Sure.
Sometimes I'm like, man, we are so old because we're in bed by like 9:30 and usually asleep by 10. If we've stayed out with friends and it's like 10:30 or 11, I don't even know who I am the next day. And I feel like I need a pot of coffee and everything's not right in my world. But
yeah, if you text me after 9 o'clock, I will respond to you at 5 a.m. the next day. So I hope you've turned off your notifications because I sure have.
Yeah, you know me, my phone goes on sleep mode at like 9.
Yeah,
and like,
that's right.
Unless it's an emergency, you're probably not going to hear from me.
That's right. What's our challenge of the week?
Challenge of the week is to reach out to your mentor
Mm-hmm.
and tell them how grateful you are for their investment in you, because time is literally the only resource that cannot be replicated. Or maybe you do that a lot and maybe you're mentoring someone. So just remember to continue to encourage them, because if someone has been on your mind, I don't know, maybe this is just me. If someone's been on your mind, or if you feel compelled to tell someone that you're proud of them or to encourage them in a certain way, that person probably really needed that in that exact moment. It's funny how that works out. So this is our little nudge to you to do one of the two things or both. Be an overachiever here and do both things.
That's a really sweet challenge. I think we should do that.
I think we should do that.
Today, we are talking a little bit about personality types and leadership. And so this is one of my favorite things to get to talk about. But I think we all need to look inside of ourselves a lot and figure out who we are and then how we can be better people, better parents, better kids, better employees, better realtors, all the things. So how are we growing and improving? That's what I really like to talk about. So today we're going to...
It's not a lie. He really does like to talk about it. I mean that in a good way. This is me paying him a compliment. He's great at this in developing people.
So Rachel's like, please just talk about this in the podcast so I don't have to listen to it ever.
That's not true.
Right. One of my favorite old business books is a book called The Leadership Code, and it's a 2x2 grid. You know my infatuation for leadership constructs, and putting 4 squares on a screen always makes me happy. So up and down, we're going to look at today and tomorrow, or you might call it long-term goals and short-term goals. And then across the bottom will be individual and team. So who are you focused on today or tomorrow, and individual or team. So let's start in the upper left quadrant. Tomorrow, a long-term goal focused on the individual is the human capital developer. So this is the quadrant that I love to fall into. One of my favorite things that I get to do is just develop people. I like to take the people individually around me and make them all as best as I can. So I hope that you are growing. I hope that you are getting better. And I hope that I get to guide you in that process. That is one of my favorite things that I get to do with a team. So individually take each person and ramp them up a little bit.
So I want you to talk a little bit more about this practically. I know that you've had a team in the recent past that was maybe hired on to do specific roles. Like, you know, and every company does this, you know, so there's no shame in that. There's just like, hey, we have this job that needs to be done. We're going to find a person that can do this job. And then, you know, hopefully they're a great fit for the team. But then once the team is all together, you see some proficiencies start to develop or maybe be more apparent. And so Andrew, the Mr. Master of this, Mr. Bossy Man Master, looked at his team and said, hey, I think we need to like really be in the best seats on the bus. And now that we're all together as this team, some of those things might need to be tweaked because we notice who's great at what and who really thrives in this particular seat. And so we're going to like shuffle everybody around so that we're all doing things we love. 2, we're all doing things that we're the best at. And 3, this makes our team dynamic really, really great. Right? Would that be the practical example of how this really works?
Absolutely. So that's to toot my own horn here. That's a great example, Rachel. The ultimate goal is to care about the people on your team. So they are individuals. They have their own thoughts. They have their own motivations. And so I just need you to care about them a whole lot. Now, in caring, how do you also say, what do you want to do 6 months from now or a year from now or 10 years from now? So you're going to develop some individual goals, and then we're going to walk through a way to meet those goals. Now, that goal could be, man, I want to shift jobs completely. Great. That's a great goal. Now, how do we put in benchmarks in order to get to that goal of changing careers completely? And so that's what happened with one of the guys on my team. He was like, man, I'm really struggling with one area of this and I'm really thriving in another area of this. And so we developed a training platform for him to get even better at that one area. And then we removed the stuff that he wasn't good at in his own role. And so it was a way for us to individualize the workload, which was really, really helpful for our team. So tomorrow, individual, if that's what you like to think about a lot, you might be a developer. If you like thinking about tomorrow or the long-term strategy of things and you want to do it for your entire team, you are a strategist. So you love to think about the future and how to get to the end of the road. Something our Kangaroos teammate does exceptionally well here is Rachel is a phenomenal strategy mind. She is great at strategy. So, yeah.
One day we should do this in video. I feel like our facial expressions say so many things people can't see. I love strategy. I like thinking about how all the pieces work together. I've never played chess, wildly enough, but I feel like that's maybe a really great compare. I don't know how to play chess.
Oh, that we should fix for sure.
Okay, well, we're going to put a pin in that. Come back to it. Card games, chess. We've got our work cut out for us. If we survive that, we know that we're actually friends. Yeah, I love being strategic. I like all the moving pieces. I like problem solving and thinking on my feet, and I like a good challenge. So, and I like
the
thinking
whole time
about
you're moving the team forward. You're not worried so much about the individual as much as all of us accomplishing the task at hand.
Yeah. And I think that um, Andrew and I work well together because we are focused. I mean, I still like people. Andrew still likes strategy, but because we walk forward together thinking about, like, if Andrew's focused on individuals on our team and I'm focused on how we all do that well, that overlaps a lot. So
That's right.
It's like, as we're being strategic, Andrew's like, what if this person handled this? Great. That gets us to this next thing. That does it a lot quicker because everyone's thriving or happy. As an aside, to talk about both of these things together in a real world example, I think that we can all probably relate to is during COVID, companies, dun dun dun, the doom and gloom music keeps, or the suspense music keeps popping in. We need like a little button that we push, like the radio. Well, let's work on that, Mr. Media Man over there. Okay, great, thanks. What I was going to say before we have totally derailed again is that during COVID, everyone was thrown into fight or flight. And as individuals, because no one knew what was going on. And so as people, beings, like animal beings, people, that portion of ourselves, it is survival. So you figured out, you did what you had to do to make it through a pandemic that none of us had ever lived through before. None of us can say that we've lived. Well, now we can. But at the time, no one knew really what that meant. Like, what is this going to look like? What is this going to mean? I'm having to rearrange my life overnight to make it through this season that was the longest 2 weeks in the history of the world, and so I think as individuals, we did that, but as companies, we also did that. So it was sort of like a free for all. It was like how we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So we are having to pivot, and do just to keep things moving. And like, that's okay. Like, I'm saying that was necessary, right? Like, that was necessary because it's true. Like, none of us can ever predict the future. However, most of the time, the future is a little bit more predictable than what we've just lived through, right? So, it's easy once you've done that. There's all the books about 21 days to build a new habit, and there's all this research about how you literally wire new pathways in your brain when you've done something, so that builds this new habit. Well, we've lived in this new normal for 2 years, right? 2+ years. And so, but the reality is the world has changed again. We're not living in March 2020 anymore. There is we are better able to predict the future as we were before COVID struck. So now it's time for all of us to take a step back and take a deep breath and be like, okay, what needs to adjust? What needs to change? I think the reason that we have seen burnout really, truly across the board is because of what I just said. We've been stuck in this fight or flight survival mode without taking a deep breath, recasting vision, redefining strategy, redeveloping people, and making sure everyone's in the right seat on the bus. And so this is sort of a note to all of us who would consider ourselves leaders or influential in any way, even for ourselves as like sole proprietors or small business owners or small team leaders, or just like corporate executives. No matter where you fit on that grid, it's time to take a step and look at these 2 quadrants that we've just talked about. Like, your strategy, is it helping achieve your vision? Are you casting vision? And are you really caring for your people that have just walked through a worldwide pandemic for 2 years? Have you talked to them about, hey, I bet you have fundamentally changed having lived through this. What are your new goals? What have you discovered maybe in the past 2 years that you're great at, or that you've discovered, I've just kind of landed in this seat because it had to be done, and I'm actually really miserable in this seat. Thank you for talking to me. How do I put someone else in this seat and get into the seat that I need to be in? Because I'm really a valuable member of your team, and I want to be on your team. But to be on your team, I need to be doing something else. And here's where I think I fit.
This is a really good segue to caring about the individual for the immediacy of today. So at that point, you're shifting from a developer and strategist to a talent manager. So what I need you to do, and I think what we did poorly during COVID, is really care about the immediacy of today for the individuals on our team. So you're talking about, if somebody's on the wrong seat of the bus, man, that is a today issue. So I'm going to manage that talent that I have on my team and try to figure out what's next. So then it's a combination of today I've got to do something, and tomorrow I'm going to develop them. So I'm going to manage that talent and I'm going to develop. So it's a both and if you want to really hone in on who the individual is. And I think that some of that is it ebbs and flows as the surroundings of our world change. And so sometimes the strategy of tomorrow becomes the immediacy of today.
Yeah.
And so managing that talent is individual in today.
Yeah. And I think we've touched on how all these sort of overlap, and maybe instead of a quadrant, it should really look more like a Venn diagram or something. But
sure. That's right.
But in the same way, like if you're not healthy in any one of these quadrants, it affects the rest of the quadrant. So when your individuals are unhappy or in the wrong seat or XYZ, whatever those things are that we've just talked about that you need to be evaluating, it's going to affect your team in the present and in the future. So your strategy will suffer, your development will suffer in the future if you are not doing something about those things today. Your execution, right, which is our next block that we want to talk about, will suffer if those other three quadrants are not in a healthy place. So
that's right.
The execution quadrant, Andrew.
Yeah. So if you care a lot about the team and the immediacy of today, you have a team full of executors. I love a team full of executors. I love it when my guys tackle the problems at hand, and I love to come alongside them and either manage them or develop them, or provide them strategy. And so that is how my role has shifted on my team as the leader of the team, that I am doing less execution and I have a team full of executors. And so what that is good for is they just make everything happen. They are the guys that are excellent in their roles. And so they are the ones that are making the magic happen.
Yeah, I think so. We've talked about the quadrants. So we have an understanding about the quadrants. It might help whoever's listening to literally draw this on a piece of paper so you can visually see it. But this matters as a leader because why? Because all of these things need to be healthy.
That's right.
And growing and thriving in order for your organization or small business or whatever to be healthy and grow and thrive.
So if I can throw one little caveat here, and the book does this, so this isn't mine, but we do love caveats here on the podcast.
We're full of them.
One that overlaps every single quadrant is personal proficiencies. So how are you investing in yourself? How are you making yourself better? It is a tomorrow issue. It is a today issue. It helps you as an individual. It helps you on your team. How are you investing in yourself? So grow yourself in all of these areas and you will be a great, well-rounded employee and leader, and go.
Yeah, I think another caveat, here we go.
Come on.
is that sometimes these leadership books or these quadrants or whatever, and there's plenty of them to be had, can feel very overwhelming because none of us are naturally great at all of these.
Well,
except for me. That's what Andrew's saying. Right. Just kidding. I will. Anyway, it's a whole different, that's for therapy, not for the podcast. But I think just the recognition of knowing, hey, these are things that I need to think about is step one.
That's right. That's
so
right.
It's like, oh, now I've learned, like, there's some different ways I can be thinking. How can I start thinking about these things? Who on my team, like, how do I identify the people that fit into these quadrants? It might be literally let's sit down and talk through this and like figure out where everyone lives. Okay, great. Employee A is here, B is here. I have 3 executors, but I have no one developing talent. That's who I need to start looking for.
That's right.
When
or
I'm
you need to
building
become
out.
that.
Yeah, I need to become that so that I have a well-rounded, healthy team.
That's right. As a leader, you should really step out of execution and move into the other areas. But that's also what made us so great at our jobs, was executing everything. And so how can you now multiply yourself by having a team of better executors?
Yeah. And I'm going to throw another thing in this that is totally off script, so Andrew doesn't know what I'm about to say. This is fun. But I think that brings us to a really good part of this discussion, which is it is easier to do when your team is small or when you're responsible for a smaller group of people to do exercises like this. What's hard to do is when you are an executive leader of a company that has hundreds of people. Well, practically, you cannot know every single person well enough to know where they fit into this quadrant. I think good leaders make an effort to know everyone within their organization, to know their name. And you can show ways that you care corporately by how you treat other people within your immediate care. I think that speaks volumes about how you care for people. And so therefore you're building respect, even if a person doesn't know you personally. So that's a whole other aside that goes back to maybe your reputation and character episode that we've had in the past. But if you do this and you care about this, then that means the leaders that are in your care, that are caring for other people, need to be just as caring. Like they need to care about this as much as you do, which means this is the thing that you live and breathe and speak. So that's an expectation you have of them. And if they're being cared for and their buckets are being poured into, most likely that's going to overflow into the teams below them. So it does, I think it's a culture thing.
That's right. That's a great word. I was listening to there's your one.
Kidding.
Yep.
That's my one.
I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about it was a parenting podcast, and his doctor told him, his pediatrician had told him as a parent that even the fact that you're worrying about being a good parent makes you a good parent. And so there are so many parents out there that don't care about being a good parent. And the fact that you're thinking about it is good. And so I think the same is true here. If you're thinking about leadership, like what you were saying, you're already a step above. You're already a step ahead of everybody else that just isn't thinking about leadership. And so how can you lean into simple ideas, simple constructs like this, and develop yourself as a really good leader with a great reputation that people will now want to work with?
Yeah, I think you just said something that we need to like highlight, asterisk, bold. A really good leader cares about developing themselves, and that doesn't stop. There's never a point at which you say, I'm the best I can be. No, good leaders are always learning. They're always looking at and evaluating themselves for deficiencies. If there's a deficiency that they cannot conquer themselves because of personality or just talent, everyone has something they're not great at, and that's okay. That's why there's lots of us on this planet, because we all pick up the other pieces. But that's where you hire team members to help you in the areas that you're not the strongest or whatever that is. But the point being is a good leader never says, I've arrived.
That's right. And you get the last word today. Good job.
I love having the last word. Okay, we're done. Local question of the day, so that Andrew can't add to anything that I've just said. Nashville is known for lots of things. Music, tourism.
Oh, yeah. Bachelorette parties.
Yeah. The Broadway bike bus beer things that I can't think of what they're called. What are those?
Pedal taverns.
Thank you. Bike bus beer things is a much better name.
Just the whole Broadway experience.
Whole Broadway experience. Country music stars that don't actually live here, opening bars on Broadway. That, and also hot chicken. Andrew, what's your take? Do you love it? Do you not love it? And if you do love it, where do you go to eat it?
I like food with a lot of flavor. So hot chicken has a lot of flavor until it just gets dumb. And so I am beyond the age of like trying to eat the hottest things out there. I will never, like, that's not a challenge. Like, no, the answer is no. But okay, so I went to Prince's one of the first weeks when we moved here to town, and we went to the original Prince's, and the lady at the cash register was like, "This is your first time here?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She goes, "Oh, you can only order up to medium." And I was like, "Great, I will take medium." And it was so hot, but it was really good. It was really, really flavorful, really good. And I don't know that I need to eat hot chicken again. I definitely don't need to go any hotter. That's silly, but it's fine. I like it. I don't crave it, but absolutely Prince's is where I would go. Absolutely. Hands down.
I have a caveat. Maybe not a caveat, but of course I do. So I think for people who grew up in the South, you don't need a restaurant to have hot chicken. Like, you probably grew up with your grandmother or some family member making hot chicken, a good friend that you ate. Hot is relative, right?
Sure.
So I think when you have homemade hot chicken, it is spicy, but it's like flavorful spicy, not burn your tongue off spicy. I think the commercialization of hot chicken has made this off the charts spicy, just to like as a challenge to people, so that it drives people into the restaurant to eat the hot chicken to say they've done it, not because you'd actually be served that and the restaurant's trying to recreate your grandmother's meal. Does that make sense? So
absolutely.
I think some of the best hot chicken I've had is actually not in Nashville, it's in Memphis, by people who don't own restaurants. It's just friends that have made hot chicken. But if I had to go to a restaurant, I would say there are several that started off like with people who were those people that made all their friends meals, and then everyone's like, you should open a restaurant, and then here we are. So Prince's, I think, was also my first Nashville hot chicken experience.
It's the original. Like, that's where it was.
The original.
Yeah.
I went with an author that I was working with at the time who was in town, and I knew better than to order the spiciest of spicy. She did not know better. Well, I think she knew better, but she was going to do it to say she'd done it. I, like you, like to enjoy my food. So at the same place, like if I went to a Thai restaurant, I love spicy food. I'm not ordering Thai 5. I'm like, I'll take a 2 or a 3 max. Yeah. Like, I don't want this to burn my esophagus on the way down. Like, I want to enjoy this meal. So the same way, like, medium's probably the hottest I'm going to go. At some point, it gets so spicy that you actually can't taste the flavor. I'm not about that game. And, all you 22-year-olds can do it. Come talk to me about your heartburn later. But I am definitely the lady that doesn't want to sleep or doesn't want to not be able to sleep because I've had hot chicken 2 hours before.
Our local Whole Foods, on their little hot lunch area, will often have Prince's hot chicken on the menu.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't see that pairing, but great.
So I walked over to the chef and was like, "Hey, can I get the recipe for the hot chicken?" And he looked at me and said, "Sure." And he went back into the back, printed it off for me, and handed it to me. First thing on the recipe, 40 pounds of chicken. I was like, okay, like, nope, I'm not going to make this recipe, nor am I going to do the math to make it.
Andrew needs to have a barbecue,
right?
Or like what we don't call him barbecue, a get together. Can we call him that in his backyard so that he can make 40 pounds of hot chicken?
Too much.
Good grief. Now that would be like, oh, that's $843 and we're only at 19 pounds. Do you really need 40?
So I hope you've had fun today. I know I have. I hope you've learned a little bit more about leadership and about yourself. So if you would rate and review this episode and share it with your friends that need to know a little bit more about leadership. Also, if you will sign up for Kangaroost at $65 a month, we provide you all of the designs, all of the share squares, all of the captions, all the hashtags, everything you need, an intentional plan. It is real good. Rachel, our discount code is first month 50. It's only taken me a few episodes for me to learn that.
First month 50, first month words 50. So spell out first month, use the numbers 50 at the end, and it's 50% off of your first month, like Andrew has now learned.
There we go. All right, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Happy whatever day it is that you're listening to this.
Happy today.
Happy today.